Hola, ¿qué tal? Buenas tardes, queridos amigos. Les saluda su amiga Danya Aispuro en una sesión más de Alerta Digital. Les agradezco mucho que estén con nosotros el día de hoy. Tenemos a Van. Vamos a hablar sobre un tema que ha estado sonando muchísimo en las redes sociales desde hace un par de semanas, evidentemente, y esto es sobre qué relación existe entre la brutalidad policíaca y el racismo. Queremos hablar un poquito o entender un poco si la brutalidad policíaca es acompañada del racismo o se debe al racismo per se, o es simplemente una brutalidad que se da hacia el ciudadano por parte de los agentes de policía. Van, desde Atlanta, desde Georgia. Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm doing well. Sorry, I'm not good at Spanish. I caught a little bit of that. So.
Absolutely understand that, technology is kind of crazy these days, so we've been struggling a lot. You are in Georgia right now, and you guys are having like a lot of like a massive protesters and a lot of situations going on due to George Floyd's. There's movements, Black Lives Matter, that are going on all over the country, and it's been kind of rough for a lot of us because they've been destroying a lot of things all along the country and everything. Is it brutality from the police officers are only to the Black community, or it's in general, or what do you think? And also to see if racism here in the United States is a matter, a real matter that we have to concern about. What do you think about that?
Basically, part of the fabric of this country. It's been going on for over 400 years. As we know, Africans were stolen, brought here to America, and the country was built on their backs. The White House, roads, everything in this country was built on the backs of Black Americans. And so, yeah, it's systemic. It's systemic. It's outright, and it's going on everywhere. And there have been a lot of people who have been angry about the rioting and the destruction of property. But as I always say, property can be rebuilt. Most of these buildings have insurance policies, but you can't do that to a human being. I feel basically that the buildings aren't as important as the lives that are being lost. I mean, we keep seeing police brutality and deaths at the hands of the police, but a lot of people are seeing that the buildings are more important.
Yes, I definitely understand all that, and I definitely support every life. We have to take care of all of us for sure, and minorities are sometimes, take it from granted, and then they kind of do things that they're not supposed to do. All the data that we have on the government and everywhere, and the situation is that we have in 2019, 209 Black people were killed by police officers, and 391 white people were killed also the same year. So, did you think that this matter could be taken as a political? On the Black Lives Matter website, they have on their own website, they say that all the donations that they have, they send it to Democrats to fund them. So what do you think about that? Do you think is this political, or is an actual racism?
I think that anything can be politicized, anything from climate change to race relations. And I saw that number as well, but when you put it into perspective, the Black community makes up such a smaller number of the community. Although you may have 3,000 white people and 1,000 black people, but percentage-wise, 60% of those black people are getting killed to, percentage-wise to every 30%. So when you take in the account of the population and then add that in with the murders, more black people are getting killed numerically. And like I said, anything can be politicized. We're in an election year, so politicians are going to find, on both sides, are going to find any reason to talk about it. But even when it's not an election year, this is still an issue. I mean, you have Tamir Rice, who was a 12-year-old in a park, and he was just playing cops and robbers with a toy gun, and he was gunned down in less than 3 seconds.
Statistics say that the 50% of the crime in the United States is committed by Black community. What do you think about that?
Well, that depends on what numbers. I mean, if you start taking into, it depends on what type of crime.
In this case, what we need to know, and we need to be fair, we need to understand what's going on, and we need to know, because sometimes these type of movements like the Black Lives Matter makes us believe that it's more political than anything else. When you compare what's going on what they're doing with data, sometimes doesn't match reality with what they're doing and saying to what actual facts are. So I love my Black community, and I have deep love for them, and I have a lot of friends also that are in that community, and they know we know each other for a long time. However, we need to be fair, and we need to understand if politicians are manipulating us to do such and such things for their own benefit. So that's the reason I'm bringing up all this data, to see if reality matches to what the police is telling us, or what the Democrats are saying, or Black Lives Matters, because all lives matters. In fact, do you feel that there's racism against you per se?
Absolutely. I absolutely believe there's racism against me. I'm actually one half of an interracial marriage, and I've gotten death threats from friends of my husband's family. I've gotten threats from my in-laws, my immediate in-laws. So yeah, I absolutely have experienced it being an interracial couple in the South. There's some restaurants we won't go into because we walk in and we can just feel the energy change. And I mean, just last year, I got a threat that someone wanted to lynch me. This is someone very close to a marital family member. So yeah, I definitely have experienced it. And you had mentioned, what the Democrats say and BLM says, but there's, 3 sides to every story: your side, my side, and the truth. That's what they always like to say. So, the Republican side can find, facts and figures that fits their narrative. The Democratic side can find facts and figures that fits their narrative. But one thing I've noticed with Black Lives Matter is they're not, it's being politicized, but they're not about Democrat, Republican. They're about police reform. They're about not being murdered in the street. They're about, people showing restraint when it comes to our lives. But if they look into it more, that's actually what they do in the military to respect fallen soldiers. It's actually, and someone actually in the military who was a white man told him that, like, a way to still show respect to the flag, but to get your point across is to take a knee. Black Lives Matter movement is all about equality, because people keep saying all lives matter. Well, if people truly believe that all lives matter, Black lives would be within those all lives matter. So if they're like, all lives matter, it's like, yes. So you believe that Black lives matter because Black lives are part of all lives.
All life, correct. And when I mentioned about the 50% of the crime committed by a Black community, do you think it's because they don't have the same chances as the white? Have you seen any sign that says, okay, these people are getting advantage of everything, and I am not, I'm not being supported by the system? 75% of Black, they are, and Latinos, I'm Latina, and we are the ones that earn less money than for instance, Asian and then also white communities. We earn less than them. But in fact, when you see the data and you see what's going on with all that information, you can see that the people that own houses, which is one of the American dream here in the United States, the ones that own houses, the 75 to 80% of Black communities are the ones that own houses more than white people, and more even than Asian. They earn more money because we as Latinos and you as a Black community that belong to that, and I belong to the also Latino, and I hate to say these things because we are only one humanity, so I honestly don't like, but this is a matter that has been going for a long time, and we're getting tired, and I get messages everywhere like, hey, what's going on here, especially from other countries, to make sure to understand what's going on. We're trying to dig in a little bit deeper. And the thing is, okay, when we have subsidized houses and everything, it's because the system is helping us somehow. What do you think about that? Do you think that we still don't have the same opportunities than white people?
Absolutely, and that goes back hundreds of years. That goes back to redlining here in the South. If you look up something, for instance, Tulsa, Juneteenth is coming up this weekend, and Black Wall Street. Black Americans had created their own Wall Street bank, schools. They created a strong community, and then, not to politicize, but the government destroyed it. There's a place here in Georgia called Oscarville. It was also a very thriving Black community up near Lake Lanier, North Georgia, and they basically did a racial cleansing, as it was called at the time, and they kicked the Black people out. Forsyth County, which is only a few miles away from me, had no Black people living there as late as 1992, and they still have Klan rallies up there. You have something. There was a Black neighborhood in Central Park about 150 years ago, and they were kicked out. So anytime the Black community, especially, I'm not sure about the Latin community, I can't speak to that, but every time the Black community tries to, as they say, pick ourselves up by our bootstraps, we keep getting, they bomb our neighborhoods. You have the war on drugs from the 70s and 80s. They bring drugs into our community. So if you keep knocking the Black community down every time they build themselves up, you got to get by. Now, as for the Blacks creating or doing more crime, that again depends on what statistic you're looking at, depends on how much of the population you're looking at, and depends on what crime you're looking at. I mean, you could easily talk about white collar crime, and you could talk about the politicians and senators who recently pulled out a lot of stocks when they found out about the COVID-19 crisis about to occur, so that way they didn't have to incur any fees. When it comes to the Black community trying to build themselves up, every time we're knocked back down. We go to the bank for a loan and they won't grant us loans. Or you have something like the Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac where it's a predatory loan. It's every time we've tried ever since Juneteenth, ever since slavery ended and we were notified of it, we haven't been given fair chances. Things are still changing, but we're far from equality and far from getting our fair shake when it comes to everything.
Okay, so you think that you don't have the same opportunities that whites have? We saw a lot of whites out there talking about Trump was doing his campaign 4 years ago. He obviously made all these people that for a reason feel that they are superior for a reason because they color skin is a lot more lighter than ours. What do you think about that? Do you think that the elections is something that is related to all this situation, what is happening right now? 4 years ago happened with Trump. Right now it's happening with all these waves of Black Lives Matter and all these which is really terrible to hear and see how a police officer is doing what he's doing. Why is all this, situation going on right now that we have elections? Do you think it's related to that?
I don't think it's related to the election. I mean, if you think back, the civil rights movement of the 60s, that wasn't just in an election year. It was throughout the entire decade and beyond. I actually participated in a Black Lives Matter movement back in 2017, and then there was another one in 2014. So during one of those, Obama was in office. During the other one, Trump was in office. I actually think the reason why it's such a force right now is because of the coronavirus pandemic. People are losing their jobs. They're stuck at home. They've been in one place for an extended period of time. And the news cycle every day since the end of February has been COVID-19, COVID-19, COVID-19. Then they're, flipping through the channel and they see somebody with their a knee on their neck for almost 9 minutes, and and now it's like, oh, this keeps happening, and so it's just a perfect storm. People are tired of sitting at home. They want to do something because they've had several months to reflect on their life and their purpose, and so they're like, I'm going to do something. I'm not going to work. I have all this time. I'm going to make a positive change in my life. Racism is bad. I believe that Black lives are part of all lives and Black people are disproportionately killed. So I'm going to make my voice heard and I'm going to be out there marching with my brothers and sisters.
Oh, absolutely. We've been stressed out because of the yes. And you think that that's one of the reasons people are coming out of their houses and make these protesters happen?
Absolutely. Because, I mean, and that's why we're seeing people of so many different nationalities. I mean, Black people have been doing this year after year. Every time I see it, I always see that. We have the Freddie Gray marches and the Michael Brown. I mean, every time another Black person is killed, Sandra Bland, it's not just men, it's women as well. We march.
And we have to be fair. Even Latinos, whites, Black, whatever your color skin is, we all happening to have the same situation. We live like the brutality. It's not something we all live that day by day. There's an officer, Michael Mirror. He was talking about there's 568 million cases that they take as an officers, and they are positive, they successful, and one thing happened, and then they say we all are unfairly treated. Because I saw a lot of images and videos showing how people, enraged, obviously go after the police officers and try to do everything to them because of the anger that exists in our communities. So people to make mistakes. What do you think about that?
Well, people keep doing the whole bad apple analogy, but it's easy to say, there's a lot of good, but if the bad cops are killing people, I'll give you a perfect example. There was a female cop. She actually saw her partner with his knee on the neck of a suspect, and she stopped it. She actually got reprimanded. She was fired by the force, and she lost her pension. So she's one of the good cops. But when she tried to speak out to stop a bad cop, she lost her career. She, lost everything. So people keep saying, oh, it's only a few bad apples, but there's so many bad apples falling from the tree. You have to start looking at the roots. You have to start looking, is it the training? Is it their mental state? So yeah, it could be just a few, but these few are poisoning others, and the ones who are good aren't stopping them. And so you have to restructure and find out what the problem is and extricate that problem.
Yes, some of them are not that great, and they are actually white supremacists. And some of them I heard, and I don't want to mention names or anything like that, but they belong to the Ku Klux Klan also. We had a couple of cases back in California that were protesters also, but from the Ku Klux Klan that stopped someone else, another person. We all saw him and we were like, what's going on here? This is California. How is it possible that we have a lot of Latinos and from everywhere in the world, like in the United States in general, we have people from everywhere.
Racism and the Klan isn't confined to just one zip code. In my lifetime, still do Klan meetings at the local park. It's called Stone Mountain Park, and it's a giant mountain face that has a carving of Confederate generals on it. We have streets named after Confederate generals. they still have Klan meetings in Douglas County, which is about an hour from me. And people, can take off their hood and they can be officers and judges and teachers. And then that goes back to what we were talking about how they might not give a person of color a chance in school or for a job because of their white supremacy running so deep. And it might not be something that blatant. It could be something like privilege, like white privilege. That's been,
What do you
another word
think
that's
that
been.
is?
White privilege is exactly what it sounds like. You are getting privileges because you're white. You may not have, a 401k or a trust fund when you're born, but you are given opportunities. For instance, a cop isn't going to pull you over with his gun drawn, and just because you're white. You may be given a loan when a person of color is. And that's why a lot of Black people say we have to work twice as hard to get half as far because in most instances we're never going to be seen as good enough.
What do we have to do to avoid racism?
That's a very big question. I've seen kids who love anyone and everyone, so for them racism is taught. Their parents, grandparents, whomever taught it to them. So is that to say that it dies out with the old generation? No, I know people who are racist in their 30s who think they're superior to everyone with more melanin. So I think it's just that those who aren't racist and people are like, I'm not racist. As the saying goes, you have to be anti-racist. You have to make those, you have to stand up. And if you have friends who are saying, for instance, racist jokes, you have to call them out on it. If you work in a position of power and you notice that they are not interviewing or hiring Black candidates simply because of their name, you have to call that out and you have to make a difference. You have to basically, it's going to be a long process. I mean, it's been going on for almost half a millennia, so it's going to take time. But
Correct.
if you are not racist or anti-racist, you have to show it because people can put a black square on social media and do hashtag Black Lives Matter and move on with their life. But if they're not doing the actions that shows
That's right.
that they're an ally, it's not. It's all going to be for naught.
We shouldn't let any of this happen, and we have to always speak out loud about these things always. When you see
Absolutely.
someone that is around you and you see that someone else is taking advantage because of a color skin, call out loud. Say it.
Absolutely.
Don't let it happen to anyone. It doesn't matter about what race is that. Just don't let it happen. If you're suffering from racism, also you have to speak out loud and say, no, sir, no, I'm not taking this.
And if
We
you
don't have
have
to be
privilege,
violent. We don't have to, fight against anyone. My color skin is not going to define how smart I am because we are smart. We do are smart. I know a lot of Latinos, Black people, white people, Asian people who are very smart. We are equally smart. And the thing is that we shouldn't be even have these conversations at all because we are one humanity. We shouldn't be talking about this because it doesn't really matter.
if people have that privilege, they should use it for good. Like you said, speak out because people, there might be more
Right.
gravitas.
What your conclusions would be about this police brutality after you hear all this data that we have? Is it fair for us to go on a movement and then actually destroy everything around, or what we gonna learn from this?
Well, things can be rebuilt. Buildings can be rebuilt. They can be rebought. There's insurance. I have to say, I'm not totally against it because I understand the pain that's coming from, and that's probably a cultural difference. I understand the pain and the stress and just being tired of not being listened and to see our brothers and sisters murdered day after day, week after week. I mean, 4 Black people have been hung from trees within the past 2 weeks here in America. They are lynching us in the street in front of City Hall in Manhattan, all over the country.
To me, it's more political than anything else. Not that it doesn't exist or anything like that, but it's actually they are actually taking advantage of everything. But that's
Oh yeah, politicians will
how it
take
is.
advantage of
It
anything
is.
in an
It is
election
what it
year.
is. Thank you so much for being here with
Sure.
us. I appreciate it, and let's be one instead separating us. want to.
And remember that Black lives are a part of all lives. If you say all lives matter, that includes Black lives. So show that Black lives matter to you as much as all lives. Black, Asian, trans, everything.
Everything, everyone and everyone. Absolutely. Okay, thank you so much. And
thank you. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Gracias a todos por estar con nosotros. Les agradezco muchísimo. Les agradecemos mucho que hayan estado con nosotros y nos vemos la próxima.